Hello my beautiful people. Welcome to the 5th installment of Reddit entries read to you by the stinkiest Reddit mod. Today we're going to be reading entries from r/badtriptales, and if you couldn't tell by the title of that subreddit, it's a place to share your most bizarre, awful, and frightening experiences while on psychedelics. I strongly suggest to you, if you are a part of the Reddit community at all, to subscribe to this page. They have some pretty interesting entries, but it's fairly unknown. It's unheard of. There's only 328 members. So I was very happy to stumble upon this page in my search for content. And who knows, if this video does well, more people will subscribe, meaning more entries in the future, and I'll be able to make more videos. So, but until then, yeah, just find it on Reddit. It's r/badtriptales and join them. Share your own stories. I definitely have my own traumatic, I guess not really traumatic, but life-changing experiences with psychedelics, which brings me to our viewer discretion. If you are not above the age of 18, this is not a video for you. Please click out. You don't belong here, youngin. Okay, stay in school. I do not condone the use of drugs, and this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Now, before we get into it, I'd like to remind you guys to like and subscribe. Hit that bell, please. It will really help me out. Oh, and one more thing. Use code MOISES in the Fortnite item shop. Now, with all that being said, let's get into the video, shall we? Entry number 1, written by user/cherryblossom_baby. My boyfriend's trauma was revealed to both of us. I would like to start out by saying I have tripped many times since I was 17. I have been able to learn about the parts of me that are dark and hidden and ignored. My boyfriend, 19 male, on the other hand, has never tripped until 2 nights ago. We did mushrooms together. He only did 1 gram. I did 2.5 grams. We were having a great time until I mentioned he looked like his dad. And for some backstory, his dad has been physically and emotionally and verbally abusive to him his entire life. He still lives with him and has endured this abuse, though it hasn't been physical in years. The mention of his father escalated. I began realizing all of these similarities between them, how they're both intelligent and act superior to everyone around them, how they're both hot-headed, how they have the same threatening body language, and more. I stupidly spilled all of these thoughts to him, which sent him spiraling. I then came to the realization that he had been abusing me and his little brother. In the 2 months we've been dating, there have been at least a dozen situations where he found it funny to slap me in the face. To clarify, I also thought it was funny each time. We would laugh it off and regard it as a good joke. The slaps were kinda hard. I definitely felt them. I have slapped him a few times too, but only in response to being slapped. We found this funny as well. I realized we were normalizing physical violence that could easily turn him into striking me while angry and me dismissing it because I'm used to it. All I could think about was how similar he was to his dad, how we are continuing the fucked up cycle and passing down our trauma. He sobbed in my lap for an hour. He was very suicidal. Things felt off and still do. It felt like the veil was lifted and every issue I've ever dealt with was suddenly so clear. Yet, I was utterly hopeless. I felt that there was no point in living a life if all life had to offer was being a slave to capitalism and passing your unresolved traumas to your kids. My boyfriend hasn't really talked about what the trip was like for him, but we've decided we won't hit each other anymore. I didn't have a bad trip, but witnessing the darkest parts of my partner being revealed was frightening. I'm still shook by the revelations. I just hope he can begin healing now. Entry number 2, written by user/rockmaster47. I've never really had mental health issues like depression or anxiety before I did acid. I had used weed many times and loved it. Then tried acid once and it fucked me up mentally. Depression, disassociation, depersonalization, anxiety, frequent panic attacks, all that for about 6 months. I thought about and obsessed about the bad trip every day. It took about 6 months till I started to feel better. It's been about 1.5 years since the trip, and I'm still not 100% back to normal. I used to use weed before the acid trip, but now I can't because it just feels like I'm tripping all over again. So I took up drinking. But I had to cut that off because I was using it as a coping mechanism, not for fun. I'd say I'm about 85% back to normal, but it's like any other traumatic event. It will never go away, but dealing with it gets better. It takes time and it's terrifying because it feels like it never ends. It is my biggest regret in life, but I can't change it, so I either have to live with it or end it all. And I've thought about ending it many times. I may not have physically fucked my brain, but psychologically, I wrecked myself. I still have anxiety, but I can recognize it when it flares up and calm myself down. People say you shouldn't focus on the past, but boy do I wish I could go back to how I was before I took acid. Entry number 3, written by user/fatty. This is my first time telling this story on Reddit, but I might cross-post it also. My friend Joe and I dropped 2 tabs each of acid at my friend Bobby's house when we were like 18. Bob was not tripping, but was just hanging out smoking weed and playing music for us. It was late when we dropped, also very dark outside. About an hour in, I'm ridiculously high, but staying relaxed. I look over at Joe, and it's clear he's having a bad time. I ask him if he's alright, and he spits out with fear and terror in his eyes, "Drugs are bad." I'm trying to engage him and calm him down when he walks over to the window and leans out. At first I thought he was going to vomit. I figured I'd let him puke and get it out of his system. And then suddenly he grabs the sides of the window frame and lunges out face first for literally no reason at all. It was only 6 feet or so and cushioned by snow, but it looked like it hurt. He just lies there face down in the snow for maybe like 20 seconds. Me and Bob look out the window wondering what the fuck just happened, before calling him out to get the fuck back inside. He stands up and looks around before climbing up inside through the window into the house. He's all cut up and bleeding on his face and arms. At this point, I have it in my mind that Joe is seriously hurt and needs an ambulance, but it was just me being high. It was always clear to sober Bob that he was totally fine. So logically at this point I take out my phone and fucking call 911. Definitely not the brightest move, lol. Suddenly I realize I'm not the one that should be making this call, and I just hand the phone off to sober Bob, who thankfully tells them nothing is wrong and he just accidentally called. He tries to assure me that Joe is totally fine dude, you're just tripping sack, but I don't think I comprehend it at all. Joe starts getting crazier, rolling around, speaking gibberish, tearing shit off the wall and stuff. I don't remember all the details, but I know a few minor things in Bob's room got broken. Bob leaves the room for a moment to get some water or something, and then all of a sudden, for no reason at all, Joe jumps on top of me aggressively like he's attacking me. I don't think he hit me at all, or even hurt me, but he's on top of me for a few seconds, and we have a brief scuffle before I totally scream, "Help! Help! Help! He's gonna kill me!" This kinda snapped him out of it and he got off me. But the damage was already done. Bob rushes back into the room, followed shortly by his mom, younger brother, and sister, who was like 11 or so, way too young to be seeing this kind of shit, standing at the doorway, with their mouths open in disbelief as Joe is doing somersaults all over the floor, spitting all over himself and shit. Yeah, I had just woken up Bobby's entire family. Joe then immediately sits up and says point blank to the mom, "I wanna fuck you." She's a very sweet woman, but not a MILF by any means if that's relevant at all, which of course it is. The mom was pretty cool about the situation and put the kids to bed after making sure everyone was okay. Joe stopped being violent, but was still doing weird shit for a while. But we ultimately decided he was calm enough to bring home. We walked him home. It was very close, about a 2-minute walk, while coaching him. Don't talk to your parents if they're awake, just go straight to your room, etc. We wait across the street to make sure he gets inside okay. He stands on the porch for about a minute looking confused before he starts yelling at his house. "Mom! Mom! Are you there?" Luckily, he didn't wake his parents up before we helped him open the door. Apparently the rest of the night was uneventful, and me and Bob hang out for a while, also uneventful. So yes, mistakes were made. I'm much more experienced now, and I've handled bad trips since then with much more finesse, but I'll never forget that shit. LOL. Entry number 4, written by user/Lego Robin, 4th dimension/third eye. Yesterday, I took an edible. Things were normal and fun until I started playing with my son. He's almost 2. I began to think about how sad it is that he's growing up so fast. Things became dark and scary as I began to think of myself as a child and how sad it was that my time as a child has passed. Life as an adult is hard and depressing. I feel you there, buddy. I feel like I live my life normally on autopilot. Things have worked out for me since I left the Navy, to where I no longer have to work to make a living due to my disability. I felt that my life was on easy mode because I had a good upbringing and have always managed to do well for myself despite hardly trying. I began to cry as I held my son. I don't want him to grow up and leave me. I love him more than anything in this world. He makes me so happy. In this trip, I became a child and began crying my eyes out harder than I ever cried. a cry that you have when you lose a loved one. I began to remember the moments of my past, moments of fear and sadness as a child, moments of me crying so loud I couldn't hear or see anything. I began to see myself aging and de-aging, like the cover of a Metamorphosis book. I saw myself from all ages. I thought about my animals that had passed, how much I missed them and how sorry I was for not thinking about them as much as I used to. How I failed them and how hard it's been since they've been gone. I thought about my stuffed animals and Blanky and how I put them in a box and not on my bed like I used to. I grew up and forgot how to play. I forgot how to see the world like I used to, full of life and imagination. Between me crying and feeling sad about my parents and feeling sad about growing up, I also thought about how I pushed them away and abandoned them. That's part of life and growing up, but they hardly remember me as a child now. My parents are not the same as they were when I was young. They somehow let go of me and let me leave their home. I was their baby. How could they move on like that? Will I do the same to my son when he grows up? Will I move on one day and just be okay with him not being a part of my everyday life? A phone call every couple of weeks isn't enough. Do they not feel like this? After hitting this point, my third eye opened. I began to see the fourth dimension. It was like being unplugged from the Matrix. This world was no longer the real one. I begged to forget what I saw, to go back to forgetting and live the simplistic life. I was horrified at the knowledge of what ego really was. It's not something that can be found. Everything in the universe made sense in that moment. In fact, nothing in this world was real. It wasn't the real reality. Whatever it was that I had seen or heard, I could never forget, but I begged to go back to my dimension because I wanted to be with my family. I couldn't leave my son behind. Being a father was the only thing that I want to experience. I want to believe that this is real reality and that my son is real. I kept thinking of the Bo Burnham song, That Funny Feeling, when he says, Googling derealization, hating what you find. I Googled it and hated how much sense it all made. That's what was happening to me. Insanity. I thought for sure I would end up in the loony bin. But it wouldn't matter because what happens in this world isn't really happening, or at least not to the effect of what I can comprehend. Death no longer seemed like the end, but rather the only way to fully escape the simulation and enter the dimension I experienced. But I worried that I am like the egg theory, that I would be reincarnated into everyone, that humanity is me, and I am in it. I lost myself in this. None of my interests mattered anymore. Batman, Star Wars, martial arts. It was all just useless. But to me, my son was still my son. My everything. I was trapped with this knowledge for eternity, and forever questioning my choice to remain in this reality, and like the sheep, join the herd of the blind. End of entry. I wanted to touch upon something that he mentioned that was actually quite profound. He spoke about forgetting how to play and how he was living his life on easy mode, and it made so much sense when he said that. It reminded me of a quote from Nietzsche's book, and it goes like this: a man's maturity, that is to rediscover the seriousness he had as a child at play. And what that means to me is, if you pursue something in this world, you do it, and you should only focus on succeeding. Think about it, when you're playing dodgeball with your friends as a child, it doesn't feel good to lose, so you do everything in your power to win. I don't know, I don't have a PhD in philosophy, okay, and you don't need one to interpret philosophy. I don't think I'm too far off on deciphering what it is. It's not a very cryptic text. It's probably the least cryptic out of all of his writings. Anyways, let's move on. Entry number 5, written by user/socks in my ass. My bad weed trip, in extremely heavy detail. This is straight out of my journal. So you know when you see those pictures of mushrooms with swirly designs and instantly think of drugs? I never understood that until I had my bad trip. The night started off fine. It started off with a drinking game. We watched Twilight. I made one drink. It included 2 sorts of Bacardi and a mixer. I didn't even finish my drink, but I was a little tipsy. It was after a movie when my friend got offered an 8th for 25. She said yes. Although the last time she bought weed from that person, she got sick. She still bought it. I didn't take a hit for a while. It usually takes 1 hit to get me high. She took 1 hit and felt okay. So I took a hit and instantly knew something was off. I instantly started coughing, more than usual. I felt really shitty, like I was coughing up a lung, and I felt like I was dying. I sat back and was going to wait for my high. As soon as I sat back, I heard the girl saying that the weed is bad. I felt myself on a wiggly roller coaster. However, it was nice. I was following the pattern of the wiggly roller coaster. Well, it's working, I said. Next thing I know, a different girl is asking me if I need CBD. I said no and sat up. I think I remember taking a few videos on Snapchat, but I didn't save them. After that, I sat up. The girl that bought the weed then asked me, "Are you okay? Do you need water?" I said no. And her roommate said, "It's okay, calm down." The same scenario happened many times, like I was stuck. I tried to find the loophole. I tried getting up differently. I tried looking somewhere else. Nothing was changing, so I let myself go through different loops, letting myself sink into the darkness. The darkness was taking me until I tried harder. I pushed through my mind and let myself go through the same situation until I made a decision. This is the end of the universe. This is the end. The universe started unraveling. I was standing still, and fading out was the universe. The string that was holding it together, it had come loose, slowly starting to unravel. So I thought, there's no way the universe ends with me, right? So I went back to the square formation. I snapped back to the real world. I stood up frantically. The weed is laced. The weed is laced. I kept on saying, "Are you okay? Do you need some water?" The girl that bought the weed said, again. I shook my head. I think they laid me down, and I started slipping into my mind. My body became an outline, blinking, spinning, in a universe of nothing, like I was the only person in the world. The blinking didn't stop. I felt numb. I felt gone. I tried to go back to the real world, but I couldn't. I started thinking about my parents, but I started forgetting their faces. The world as I knew it was getting smaller in my brain. I forgot. I started feeling my real body. I started feeling my surroundings. I panicked. Wait, could I feel it? I didn't know. I woke up out of it. I ran down the hall to my dorm, not really sure what just happened. Next, I remember telling my roommate's boyfriend to turn around because I had taken my pants off. The girl that bought the weed said, "If you want me to leave, I will." I said yes, sternly, but I hated my tone. That same scenario happened so many times it felt like eternity. I said different answers. I was skeptical. I was funny. I was chill. She finally left. My roommate asked if I wanted them to leave. The first time, I said yes. Then it replayed. I said no. It happened again. I said I don't know. It happened only a few more times until they left. I was left by myself. I started walking around my room, going in the same pattern when it stopped. This is the end, I told myself. I kept doing the same thing over and over again because there was no more. This was the end. I saw the string again, coming undone. I did the same circle again. This is death, isn't it? I asked myself, but how did I die? My brain went to a dark place. My throat caught on fire. I couldn't handle it. I stopped thinking about it and started feeling fine. Every time I started feeling fine, I remember that I died. Every time I remembered this, my throat caught on fire. So I tried not to think about it, but I couldn't. I kept on thinking about my parents, my life, how I died a virgin, until I couldn't think about anything. I forgot the faces. I forgot my face. I slipped back into the outline of my body, surrounded by the blinking rainbow, and it was like everything stopped. I felt like an atom. It was the beginning of time. It started expanding into lights. I didn't know what the lights were. It was like a full circle of time. All emotions, all feelings, everything was making sense. The 5 bright lights, they had different reactions. One was already understanding and serious. Another was slow. Another was funny. Another just figured it out and had a light bulb moment. And the last one freaked out. They started whispering and the world went around into a panic. No one knew what was going on. That's when the whispers were heard. They got louder and they stopped, going back to the circle of panic. It's like they were trying to match the mind to the body. That's when I started freaking out. I shifted into nothing. It was moving so fast, I didn't even realize it was red. It looked like lava, just twisting and moving so fast. The light, it started feeling something. These are emotions, she said. We're turning to emotions. We turned to them. I turned into the emotions. There was anger, sadness, hurt, until I snapped back to real life me. I pinched myself, slapped myself. Okay, it's really me. I looked around for my phone. I remembered it was on my dresser. I then thought to myself, do something you would normally do. And as I passed the mirror, I shifted into a silly pose. I put on my PJs and went on my phone. I saw some concerning texts. I snapped a few people and tried to go to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was going to slip into the same feeling. I really didn't want to go back into that, so I tried to fight it. It didn't work. I started viewing myself in the third person point of view. I saw myself tossing and turning. I became so thirsty and very hot. I threw my blanket off me and cuddled my stuffed animal. I realized I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel myself. I realized I didn't gain touch. I needed to go back and get my touch back, so I slipped into it. I let the universe take me. I went through the circles. The whispers came back. I turned into the senses. It was faster this time. I felt everything. This time I could snap back. I felt my stuffed animal. But I woke up again and again, each time feeling more real than the last. I kept on waking up, blinking awake, but it just wasn't real enough. It was hazy, then not as blurry. But when it was blurry, I didn't realize it was. My body was starting to turn black again, the rainbow coming back. However, this time I felt my body pulsing. My heart was pounding. Why? Why was my body doing this? The light came back. A pair of arms had extended out to me, asking for something. I gave them something I didn't want to give them, and now my body started floating. Still in third person point of view, my shoes left the floor. The rainbow came back, outlining my body, this time not blinking. Stars formed. I looked around confused. The darkness turned into different colors, swirls of colors. Colorful things showed up. Plants, flowers, mushrooms, everything turned into something of color. The sky turned green. Stars had bled through the green. The 5 lights looking down at me. "We're here to help, darling," one said. I nodded. "We have taken every bad thing from you." I stared at them. Why? There was something whispering. They didn't want to answer. Why? I asked again. I wasn't going to get an answer. One light came closer. "You cannot ever comprehend this information, my darling," it said. I shook my head. I could comprehend it. They took a moment of silence. "You've been through enough tonight." I shook my head. "Was that hell?" No one answered, but the light in the middle stepped forward, guiding me down a rock path, mushrooms decorating the sides, different tones of yellow making the path. I felt comfortable, the light having a father-like tone. I felt his hand, heavy on my shoulder, but no one was next to me. "What you experienced was the beginning," he said, and that made me laugh. "No, that was the end." He chuckled loudly. What that was a glimpse of the beginning of time. However, you touched base with us. "Who are you guys?" He shook his head. "You mustn't worry about that. This is only the first time we have seen you in a long time." I looked confused. "First time in a long time?" He stopped our walk. "Well, who do you think prepped you for Earth?" I shrugged. "I don't know. I thought I was. Just born. I don't know." He chuckled once more. "I hope this isn't the last time we see you." And even though I couldn't see him, he smiled. I shook my head. "You're making me leave?" He became warm, feeling his smile. "We love you, but keeping you here would be selfish." "Can you just tell me who you are?" I said. I felt him become hesitant. He pulled an atom out of thin air, like plucking a hair. The string showed up again, the universe, back to normal. It wasn't coming undone anymore. "Next time, I'll tell you more. I'm afraid your human mind will freak out." Freak out? Why would I ever freak out? I mean, I heard people going crazy after doing drugs, but I mean, I just smoked weed, right? But what if I'm just in my head and this isn't real? Right, I'm imagining this. But what if I'm trapped inside my body? What if I don't have control over my human body? What if I was freaking out on the outside? Had I become crazy? What if I had schizophrenia? What if I don't have control over my body? I spun in a wheel, spinning slowly, a wooden wheel, until I went back to the rock trail, surrounding my mushrooms and the green sky. That is exactly why. No one can live with this. It drives you crazy, see? The lights were never people. They are the higher powers. They made the mistake of telling others, making them reach to the point of insanity. They missed me, so I have every reason to believe they're either my guardian angels or the higher powers of the universe. However, they knew me too personally. They just know too much. They took my anxieties and worries. Why? The light embraced me. He hugged me. I could feel his smile. It was the warmest embrace I had ever experienced. It made me smile. "Take life easy, my child. I will miss you." The light waved to me as they wept. The trail vanished from beneath me. The mushrooms vanished into swirls. The green skies and stars started to fade by the swirls. I started floating once more, the rainbow outlining my body. I moved my arms and legs freely. I felt at peace. I felt relaxed. I even smiled. I started sinking into the rainbow. I felt small. I became nothing but myself. At the time, I was the only thing in the universe, and suddenly it had zeroed back into real life. The rainbow went away. I became so close, I saw myself. I couldn't help it. I woke up, this time in my point of view. My eyeballs were looking at my roommate on her bed, looking at her phone. It was over. This is real life. I felt my eyes go wide. I look around. Is this real life? I asked. Am I not dead? The answer was no. Even though I questioned it for the rest of the day, and still question it to this day, a month later, I am in fact alive. I'm glad to be alive. I used to go on rants about how I would like to die, but after what happened, if that's death, then I don't want it. It was painful. It was nerve-wracking. I never want to go back. Maybe to the lights with the green sky and the rock trail with mushrooms growing on the sides. That's where I want to be. I just hope that if I ever decide to go back, I don't have to go through hell and back to get there. End of entry. Jesus Christ, what the hell did they give OP? Let me know in the comments what you think she got laced with. Entry number 6, written by user/according by 1387. My spring break trip went horribly wrong. Hey guys, so when I was 20 and in college, I experimented with some mushrooms. I did them 3 times. The first time was amazing, life-changing. I only took about 1.5 grams, but I was able to let go of so many past traumas and issues in my life. I felt reborn. Second time, I took 2 grams, but my roommate fucked it all up by inviting a bunch of strangers over when he was stoned/drunk. It wasn't a bad trip, but it left me wanting to go deeper into the shroom world. 1 month later, it was spring break. My friend and I got an Airbnb in New Hampshire, and I dropped 3 grams while also being hungover and sick from what I believe was COVID. This was right before the lockdown. And once it kicked in, oh my God, ego death. Immediate fucking ego death. I forgot I did shrooms. I thought I influenced my friends to go to this trap house and we were on some kind of hardcore drug. I thought maybe the water was making us high. Maybe the vapes. What were we taking? And I was ready to drown myself in the lake nearby to stop influencing them to do drugs. Total insanity. Hope you enjoyed the story. Haven't done shrooms since, although I would like to again. Entry number 7, written by user/IHateFurries10. So me and my mate met at a local shopping center at around 5 p.m. after school on Friday. My mate brought 2 tabs of acid with him and I brought the weed. We both dropped the tabs of acid in a bathroom in the shopping center. After that, we headed back to my house to smoke some weed to boost our buzz. Now keep in mind, this was our very first time doing acid. About 2 cones into the weed, it had been around 45 minutes since we dropped the tabs. I was definitely starting to trip hard. At this point, life didn't seem as though it could be even better. Every color was so much brighter and happier. Everything around me felt so amazing at the time. So me and my buddy thought it would be a good idea to enjoy this trip and go on an adventure to his house. His house was quite far away. We left my house with a bag of weed and feeling extremely good at the time. As we were walking down the street to the bus stop, I kept forgetting that I was in real life and that I'm going to be out in public and I need to keep myself safe. I didn't think that would be too hard. I just thought I would see some cool stuff. But let me tell you something. Never underestimate the power of psychedelics. We managed to make it to the bus stop without failure, but we came across our first problem. We were both tripping too hard to understand the time and read the bus timetables to see the next bus. So we gave up and just sat and waited for one to arrive. We sat and waited for almost 30 minutes, and at this point, it had been 1 hour and 10 minutes since we both dropped our first tabs. So any minute now, we were going to start peaking. We both sat at the back of the bus and let our trip take us with it. We were both completely zoned out and barely talking to each other as we were so far into our trip that we could barely communicate to one another. We could only laugh and spit out word after word as best we could. At this point, my trip was going insanely well and I was happy. It was then that the trip turned bad. We were now halfway home and only had about 15 minutes left on the first bus. The hallucinations were now starting to get very tense. I was staring down the middle of the bus and I can remember watching all the poles and seats on the bus changing color and watching the handles that you grab onto the bus waving and dancing from one side to another at rapid speeds. This was the last bit of the good trip I had before everything turned terrible. We had gotten off the first bus at another shopping center to get to the second bus home. At this point, I was tripping balls extremely hard, walking past people I know, trying not to talk to anyone because I was so far into this trip, it felt as though I was in another reality. We sat down at the second bus stop, awaiting for our next bus. Thankfully, it came pretty quickly, which helped me and my mate avoid talking to anyone. We knew this because we were tripping such hard balls that we couldn't speak. We sat at the back of the bus again, but this time there was a stranger sitting next to us. Me and my buddy couldn't stop laughing and giggling at each other that we definitely attracted some attention. I looked to my right and stared at this random guy sitting next to us as I watched his face morph species. I came to realize he was staring right back at me with a very weirded out look on his face. He then got off the bus a few minutes later, and we sat in separate sides of the back of the bus to cut off reality and go even further into this intense trip. This was not the greatest idea. I stared out the window as we turned left and right up the streets rapidly, feeling like I was losing my sanity. To say the least, I was losing my fucking mind on a bus full of people. Luckily, my mate has an insane amount of experience with LSD and seemed to be enjoying the trip, so he was not attracting any attention. Myself, on the other hand, I had entered hell. I remember turning into a street on the bus that was going uphill when all my vision turned into a box shape, and for a brief moment I became the bus. I can barely explain how traumatizing it was when this happened. It felt like I had completely left my body behind and turned into a bus. I remember repeating in my head over and over that this was the end and that I was going to die, but soon after I regained my vision and fortunately was not a bus anymore. I was still not completely aware of my surroundings, however. I couldn't remember anything from there until we got off the bus, as I believed I did black out. The trip got pretty intense there for a moment. My mate, who was having an amazing trip, was still half conscious. He told me it was time to get off the bus. We got off the bus and met up with other people. At this point, I was completely wigging out. Here I was sitting in a park I had gone to 100 times in my life and was so familiar with the area, but I was so far into the trip that I couldn't understand what was happening. It felt as though I was trapped inside a box and couldn't escape. I remember being absolutely drenched in sweat because of how intense the trip was, and my body couldn't handle it. I kept repeating the words in my head, "I want to go home," which seemed to calm me down a little bit. My mate told me that we were going back to his house soon and that we were just meeting up with some people first, which calmed me down. The people we met up with were all trippers. They were not currently tripping, but gave off such positive vibes that I had completely calmed down and my trip had started finally going good again. We went back to his house and I sat in his nice air-conditioned room and felt so much better. I didn't want to freak out and ruin his really good trip, so I decided to go home. At this point, it was about 1 a.m. and I got an Uber home. I jumped into my bed and tried to fall asleep as I could hear the noise that bus made in the brief moment, which was fucking horrifying to say the least. I ended up falling asleep and waking up in the morning feeling so much better. The moral of the story is to only do psychedelics when you are in a safe environment, for example at home or wherever you feel safe. Also, to avoid bad trips, always make sure that you're with someone who gives off extremely positive vibes and is an amazing person to hang out with, because they can make your trip turn from terrifying to sensational. Stay safe. Entry number 8, written by user/topleading2929. How do I help myself feel better about living? So I tripped with my boyfriend 2 days ago. I had a bad trip. It started off nice and groovy. Then towards the end of my trip, my boyfriend and I were having a conversation. I focused on his words too much and had a sudden feeling of despair. I felt scared and empty. I closed my eyes and realized I was stuck in a loop. While my eyes were closed, I saw myself. I was feeling every emotion, but I also lost a sense of time. It felt like I was the only one there and like time did not exist. 30 seconds of my eyes being closed felt like an eternity. I felt a deep feeling of loneliness. I felt like a robot. I felt like I experienced the meaning of life in the time I was having a bad trip. I asked myself, why are we here on Earth? Why are we alive? Are we actually robots? My guess is that she's questioning free will. It felt like my bad trip was a glitch. Now I keep thinking about it and feel depressed and scared. I don't know how to help myself get over it. I know it will probably take time, but it's like I saw the true meaning of life in the saddest way. I just want to stop thinking about it. If you have any tips, please let me know. Entry number 9, written by user/ElegantHornet7109. Help! I'm 23 years old and have used acid a few times. I have always really liked it. I told my boyfriend, who was 20 years old, to split a half of a tab with me. We were already on MDMA. He never took acid before and he was excited. We took it while we were alone. But then the group we came with texted us upset because him and I went off on our own. They started telling my boyfriend that they were upset, but we were having fun on our own and decided to just go off. That's when it started to get icky. He was saying how bad he felt and was asking me if what we were doing was okay. He was kind of blah the whole night and kept thinking about his friends. After about an hour of it kicking in, he needed to sit. He started saying, "Icy mint Grand Canyon," and was saying that sentence couldn't leave his head. He said it felt cold and it was smelling like mint. We continued, but he was still being a little off. After EDC, we went to an after party. He didn't speak to anyone and was kinda tweaking. It was with my friends, not his. They would talk to him and he told me that he felt dumb around them, although he was acting normal. At this point, he was sitting alone and I could tell he wasn't doing well. He kept saying no to leaving because he said people would be mad. They wouldn't, but he wouldn't let me take him home. Long story short, we had trouble getting an Uber home. This is around 4 a.m. We took acid at 10 p.m. He didn't trust that I was okay. He kept saying he thought we were going to get hurt. After 4 long hours of hell trying to get an Uber, we get home. At home, he broke down saying he wanted to die, and I couldn't get him to calm down. I'm talking hysterically crying for 4 hours straight. I've never seen him in such a frail, defeated state. He's a very mentally strong person. He said he only thought about how his future would be terrible, and that another being overtook his body saying, "You will never succeed, and I will make you fail." It has been 2 months since that event. He still gets panic attacks and flashbacks around 3 times a week. He said he is scared to go to the club that the after party was at, that he'd rather die than go back there. Anytime he hears EDM, he said it gives him severe anxiety to where he wants to cry. He told me he doesn't think he will succeed anymore and that it truly ruined him. He is a smart kid and never really did drugs before me. I feel like a total shit show. He has an amazing GPA and said he knows for a fact that he can't maintain it now after that. He just feels so off. I try and help him daily. Has this happened to anyone? Could half a tab of acid really fuck you up permanently? Is something mentally wrong with him now? He was always so happy and positive. He's still amazing, but I can tell his personality is way different and more pessimistic. We've done Molly together one other time, and he had a great time. I just wish I knew what was going on in his head. He said at points he couldn't even talk to tell me what was wrong. His body wouldn't let him. I don't know what happened. Please help. Entry number 10. Advice needed. I don't know who wrote this. I think it was a throwaway. I've been looking everywhere for help on all of this, and it seems like this place has some kind people. Me and my friend took some shrooms in this trail about a month and a half ago. We were told to take only a tab from this shroom bar, but after taking a tab about 2 months ago before, me and my friend decided to take a tab and a half, even though our plug said it could fuck us up. At first, things were fine, so we decided to smoke too. After about a couple hits of the bowl, everything hit me at once. I felt my ears pop, and it felt like everything entered me. I started feeling very sick. I started throwing up and had to keep my eyes closed. This is where the bad thoughts crept in. I just kept thinking, oh no, you've messed up your mental forever. You're gonna be messed up forever. These thoughts were so loud, and even when I tried to talk, it seemed like they would talk over me. I have a history of depression and anxiety before this, and I'm pretty sure I was having an anxiety attack during the trip. It felt like I was battling my mind for a while, saying to myself, don't let it win. But after a while, I just let it win. Since the trip, I have been very depressed, and my anxiety has been worse than ever. I think every negative thing that happens to my mental is because of the trip, and it spirals into anxiety attacks. I've started taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety pills, but I just fear the thought that I did something permanent to myself. Any words of advice would be very accepted. And that is the end of the video. This has to be the longest episode so far. 40 minutes. Jesus. Anyways, if you made it this far, thank you so much. You have no idea. It really helps me out that you're here. And since you're here, let me remind you to like and subscribe. Hit that bell button while you're at it. Might as well. Also, use code Moises in the Fortnite item shop. I had a really good time making this video. I remember, I think 2 episodes ago, I was planning to make this video after I discovered this sub, and I just couldn't wait to get to it. I had 3 more entries, and the video was already 40 minutes long, so I decided to just cut them out because they weren't that good anyway. I think the best ones were earlier in the video. So yeah, I think I'll end this off by sharing my own personal quick entry. I didn't put it on the page, but I'll just tell you now. I had an eargasm. For those of you who don't know what an eargasm is, it's something that I think I've only ever had. I was tripping on acid with my friend. We'll call him Tom. The dude really wanted to drop acid, and he had a couple tabs, and he gave me an extra one. My roommates didn't want to be a part of it, but I totally was down. So I took 1 tab, and me and Tom get to talking, and my other roommate Jess, who had taken acid before, was there to babysit us basically. and I'm glad he was there. So I was talking to him, and they both have autism, and suddenly I was thinking about how they had autism, and I was wondering, how do they live like that, or what is it like having autism? And then when they explained to me, I was starting to go into my trip. So if you noticed in the other stories, there was a point where they reached a state of general catharsis. That's kind of what happened to me. I felt really sad about them having autism, and I just really empathetic. I remember just feeling like sad about everything, about reality, and yeah, it was then I got into a loop of realization with Tom. We kept looking at each other and realizing, and then realizing that we were realizing. It's strange. We were looking at each other. We were looking at each other, and we're like, wait, no. Oh, okay. Wait, no. Oh, okay. Wait. And we did that for like 30 minutes, and then I finally realized, like, yo, I gotta get away from you, man. You're freaking me out, bro. And so I remember we were also listening to music, and it's just, when you're on acid, music that you really enjoy will make you cry. Okay, and we were both just sitting down listening to music and just crying and thinking about shit. It was just really cathartic, and it was nice in hindsight. Okay, so let's get to the eargasm. So I go to take a shower because I just feel dirty at one point. And I'm sitting there, I'm washing my dick, I'm washing my balls, and this song comes on. I don't remember what it's called, but it was an instrumental. And I just start thinking about living with autism and what it would be like, and I just felt so sad for Tom and my other roommate that I started bawling. But the song made it feel like I was in a dramatic movie. So like I was bawling like a main character losing like their best friend. And it just felt epic, and I came out I came out of the shower and all that with my face drenched in tears. My ears for some reason had liquid coming out, and so did my nose. And I walked out with the headphones still blasting music, and I was like, I had an eargasm. And just everybody started busting out laughing. I've never seen a group of people laughing that hard at me, and I was being so serious. The high did take a couple of dark turns. You started getting real philosophical and I did have an epiphany, and honestly it was life-changing, and I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't drop acid. I just wouldn't. And I'm actually thankful for the experience. And with that being said, again, like and subscribe, hit that bell button. This was fun. And with that being said, thanks for watching, and have a good night.